Crafted comedy
by Great Wolf.
It's the talk of people in the know. Welcome to the G-Block Show.
This is part one of a 4-part series. Very Sulty joins the Air Force. Ladies and gentlemen, the G-Block Show.
Hey guys, did I ever tell you about the time I was in the Air Force, boot camp?
No, I don't believe you did, Dad. No.
I don't remember you talking about that.
And neither of you have ever been in the military, have you?
But I had a couple medical situations that wouldn't allow me to join.
I wasn't drafted and I didn't go and sign up for any military. But then that's where I met you, was at Purdue.
Yeah, I went to Purdue for a while. Purdue U, we fondly call PU. But I did Purdue because I could. But after that, I joined the Air Force because I could. Because I grew up in Colorado Springs, for the most part. The Air Force Academy was right there. In fact, I actually went to the Air Force Academy junior high for a while. After that, my family ended up leaving Colorado Springs and going into Wyoming, and then on into South Dakota, and then finally into Oregon. So anyways, growing up in Colorado Springs, we the Air Force is right there. All the time seeing the Air Force jets. And the school I went to there, the Air Force guys, there was like the Air Force band would show up, and they would do their thing. There's a bunch of them. Gosh, must have been, I don't know, maybe it seemed like there was about 50 or 60. Maybe it wasn't quite that many, but there was a lot routinely show up. And it was very nice of them to do that. They were pretty impressive, to say the least. Everybody in the Air Force, from top down or down up, they're excellent. They're at the peak of perfection, basically. And so you can imagine the band was great. It seemed like a couple times a year they'd show up. And I remember this guy, he played maybe there's a couple of them, they could play the guitar. This wasn't just like a little, this was real, like these guys could really knock it out. But they play the guitar, and they play it upside down and backwards. They turn the guitar literally upside down, and then they play it even behind they turn it and put the guitar behind their back. It was just mind-blowing as a kid to see this stuff. And then they would bring out their falcons, the actual birds. Let the bird would fly way into just like you couldn't see it, like a little teeny dot. They'd have like a little piece of something that seemed like there was some meat or something on this little post. And then that falcon would just, just like out of nowhere, just there it was. And then it just come back and land right on the guy's glove. And so we got to see that. And overall, it was just amazing. I've got to say, there's just things about Colorado Springs that pretty impressive town for a lot of things. That they ended up building the U.S. Olympic. They ended up building the U.S. Olympic Training Center there. Yeah, that's where that's at. So not too far, from the Air Force Academy. The Air Academy, by the way, there's this church. I don't know if they call it a chapel. I should know this I really should know this. It's iconic, to say the least, because the church, it actually looks like jets going straight up in the air. I mean, that's the architectural design. Really pretty cool. And of course, the inside is magnificent. It's absolutely, if you're ever in Colorado Springs, you really should get out there and see that. That's for sure. Worth going and taking a look at. Been there a number of times when it was cold as jade. Sometimes, Colorado Springs would get cold, of course, in the winter. That was not unusual, but there were certain times it was a special kind of cold, right around, Christmas time. I remember going, to the Air Force Academy chapel around that, in that time of year, and it just really stands out. Sometimes it just felt like my bones were going to just break. I'm sure that, I don't know, maybe my parents didn't dress me as warm as they should have. I remember, speaking of that, believe it or not, parkas. I remember, parkas may have been around for a long time, but they weren't like commercial, not every kid. Most of us, we just froze our tail off until all of a sudden parkas came along. It seemed like it was about the time I was about in the 5th grade. And all of a sudden, everybody had these parkas, and what a difference it made. It's like, wow, with these awesome hoods and the, got like phony fur. I'm thinking, well, it had the look of fur around them, and they were just wonderful, finally. Now, that's about the same time that we started getting smart, and I started getting thermal underwear. I don't remember. I know thermal underwear probably been around for 100 years, but for some reason, all this came together about the same time. All of a sudden, I've gotten thermal underwear and a parka and, wait for it, clutter boots. We called them waffle stoppers. And now we just take it for granted. I mean, they're all over the place. I don't know if they still call them clutter boots, but I doubt they call them waffle stoppers. But boy, yeah, that made a difference. We'd have those. It was just like we went from wearing tennis shoes, for Pete's sake, in the wintertime to these awesome, like, all-terrain boots. And we'd insulate them. We put this spray stuff on them so that they'd be waterproof. Problem was, they were kind of spendy. That's almost, when you think of shoes, I was buying tennis shoes, they're around $20 a pair. The reason why we tended not to, parents didn't buy, they didn't want to spend a lot of money because kids, they're wearing one size in October, and they got another whole nother shoe size come December. So it wasn't like you really wanted to invest too much in a shoe that's just not going to be hanging around for a long time. So these waffle stompers, I remember they were up there. They were like, $80-$90, which back then was really considerable. But I remember getting them. It was this treasure between that and the parka. It was like, now bring it. Come on, bring it. Let's see what you got, winter. Huh? You're no match for me. All of us kids felt that way, I'm sure. All of a sudden, it was like we had armor. It did. It all happened at the same time. I swear, it just was bizarre, because up to this point, we're wearing these flimsy little jackets and these Converse and Keds and just freezing our tails off. Coming in the morning, the school we went to was just an amazing place. It was all open room. And most people, if they know anything about Colorado Springs, they know about District 11, the superintendent there, Doherty. They actually built this amazing high school after him, Doherty High. Well, I guess that's befitting. It was not like any other high school. I swear, I don't think there was anything like it even in Hollywood. The richest areas in the whole United States. It had 3 pools, 2 of them Olympic size. This resource center that was just like just knock your socks off. Just everything about it. And the gyms, the floors were poured floors, so that you could really have, traction, and it was low impact, I think is the word I'm looking for. And just like something, 50, 60 years ahead of its time. This was. And in fact, the junior high, which I actually went to for a while, had I know the high school did too, but there was actually a game room in the junior high, and we all had, out of the periods, we all had a free period during the day where we could just do whatever the heck we pleased, which is, talk about forward thinking. I don't think any other schools, very few, had that situation, for better or worse. But this game room wasn't like a silly little hole in the wall either in the junior high, by the way. The high school's even nicer, but that was like all kinds of foosball, pinball machines, air hockey. And they had this was right when Pong came out. So we had one of the earlier, the very first, it was the very first, the precursor to the video games out there. Back to the Air Force situation. So growing up, even though my dad, he had been in the Army. And for those people who don't know, Colorado Springs, too, is a military town, to say the least. The only thing it's not there is Navy. But you got the Army, and you've got the Air Force, and that's where NORAD is. That's where, it's right there. Oh, it's known, there's a mountain. We have Pikes Peak there, but there's Cheyenne Mountain. And NORAD is where, in case there's ever World War III nuclear situation, that's where all the bigwigs, the President of the United States, down to a certain level, people get to go. They'll get flown in there, and they get shuttled down into this bunker. I don't know how many stories below the earth there in Cheyenne Mountain, figuring that would be a pretty hard target, as it is. I don't know what they're going to do. Maybe just live out the rest of their years down there and go, how the hell that happened. But anyways, anybody who lived in Colorado Springs, it still is day. You got to live there in the shadow of this mountain. And I always remember as the last haven when all hell has broke loose. And I remember, things saying, so as a little kid, I'm talking like 4 and 5 when I was learning about this. Oh, really? So are we going to be like a number one target to hit? And they were saying, well, really, no, that's one reason why it's there is because it's quite a ways inland, intercontinental, if you're looking at weapons that can actually be fired that far. And then secondly, it would be like kind of dumb because everybody knows, this is one place it's going to be like next to, that's why they have it. That's why they picked it, because it's one place that's going to be just darn near impenetrable. And so not to worry. And by the way, if it ever happens, it doesn't really matter where you are. You're probably going to be dead. So, come on, kid. Just enjoy life. That's the best you can do. Now, I remember, my mom, because I'd worry about it sometimes. I'd say, well, gee, but I don't, I'm getting so the older I get, I don't really trust humans. And if it's just so easy to send these, I knew that we got theirs pointed at us, there's vice versa, and all it takes is somebody just to push a button. So I'm thinking, okay, that doesn't sound too, that sounds pretty risky. And so I worry about that. Some guy some leader over there, some guy over in Russia just having a bad day and saying, you know what, I don't care. Saying, I don't care. I'm ready to end it. And whoosh, let's take out the all life on Earth while I'm at it. Kind of go out in a blaze of glory, if you will. And my mom would say, you can die from a lot of things. And when you die, it's the same difference. Whether everybody died with you at the same time or it was just you. You're riding your bicycle and you don't pay attention. You're not looking where you're going. And whammo, car gets you. Bam. Or something like that. So, why worry about the nuclear? In fact, you're either way, no matter what happens when you die, you won't know it. And you wouldn't sit around and obsess that you're going to get hit by a car or some terrible disease is going to come and get you. You don't do that. You wouldn't think about that. So, don't worry about this. If it happens, it happens. Everybody's got to go sometime. Nobody lives forever. But that is why we have a defense system in the first place, is to try to help us stay safe. And that's why we have the military, the Army, and the Navy somewhere, usually by the water, and the Air Force. And if growing up, if I knew nothing else, I knew nothing could stop the U.S. Air Force. Da 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 da. Every kid in Colorado Springs knew this song, and especially the boys. Because it was just tailor made. I could go on forever about my childhood, as people know, in Colorado Springs. It was just, and the more I look back on it, the more amazing and fantastic it was. But anyways, it was, let's say, okay, so start the song, goes, off we go into the wild blue yonder, climbing high into the sun. Let's say, here they come, zooming to meet our thunder. Attaboys, give them a gun. Give them the gun. Let's see, the next part was, I'm pretty sure this way. It was down we dive, spouting our flames from under. Off with one heck of a roar. We live in fame or die in flame. But nothing can stop the U.S. Air Force. And then it goes on to something like fashion their crate of thunder, something like that. La la la, la 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 la. Anyway, you get the idea. Like, we live in fame or go down in flames. Nothing can stop the U.S. Air Force. And that was pretty reassuring. It sounded, I bought it. I believed it. I guess to this day, I guess we're still here. And to my knowledge, nothing has ever stopped the U.S. Air Force. I don't know what they're trying to do, but whatever it is, I mean, I guess they're able to. Nothing has ever stopped the U.S. Air Force. And so that's why I decided to set my sights high, because that was the thing. It was aim high. Well, I'm like, okay, that's for me. You know, I'm very salty, and nothing stops Very Salty. Nothing. And that's why I thought it's like it's meant to be that I, Very Salty, join the United States Air Force and become an elite member of that fighting force. And so I did. I went down. So I joined up. I was only 17 at the time, but I got permission, from my parents, and I went down to Lackland Air Force Base down in Texas, and it was quite a shock for me because I had never seen any place that looked, so I'm just going to say it, awful. I really felt like I must have landed on the moon. I mean, we got there.
We hope you're enjoying part 1 of a 4-part series. Very Salty joins the Air Force. You can listen to part 2 of the 4-part series, Very Salty joins the Air Force, on the next episode of the G Block Show.
You've been enjoying another episode of the G Block Show, and we hope you're telling your friends about the G Block Show. If you have feedback or suggestions or would like to be a G Block Show sponsor, please contact us at gblockshow.com. Hey, for the price of a fancy store-bought card, I will make you an online video card. An invitation, greeting, birthday wish, get well, congratulations, anything, and perhaps more than what you'd buy a traditional boring card for. I can make it for you. It's great because it's online and it can be shared or sent to anyone and everyone. No postage needed. And I'm sure you'll agree that I'm way more entertaining and lovable than any paper card. And not to mention I'm a celebrity. Oh, it's so easy. All you have to do is go to www.gblockshow.com. And that's all one word, gblockshow, and then, of course, a little .com. I'm Very Salty, and I can't wait to hear from you. Well, I can, but I'd rather not.